live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Blake, we've got a really interesting talking point. I don't know what it is about this offseason that there's these hidden headlines that will happen and then no one's talking about them. And then I'm looking, I'm doing some digging. And it's like, man, it's a slow day today for news. And then I find ACC, Clemson, and Florida State and their lawsuit, and they've reconciled, they've come to an agreement at the current moment. How was this not a huge headline yesterday? This was last night too.
Right after all that shit, after everything that happened, and here's the crazy thing. Did you see their fans coming after me?
I did. You stirred the pot, which I love. I love that you did that.
Well, you know, sometimes I just be taking shots to see what the reactions are. But
right.
They think they won. Now, you can make the argument that getting more money is winning. But I got the three things that Florida State put in their lawsuit. Do you ready? Okay. As our good friend Josh Pate, who does not like the 5+11 model. Oh, we got to get to that one day. Paper pop. Joe, they stated the three things that they wanted were this. They wanted to make the same amount of money as the Big Ten and the SEC per school. They did not get that. They wanted their buyout to be reduced and the time frame of the contract to also be reduced. The ACC makes more money from now to 2036 if they're there than if they leave. So what? You're giving them more money. So what? You're giving them a couple million more dollars, $10 million more a year. Sounds good. Joe, with the new TV contracts with the Big Ten and the SEC, they're still $15 million a year behind.
Okay, here's my only thing with this.
Okay,
are we getting into this right now? Are we
yes,
we already jumped into it. We're already okay.
Well, let's preface it then, just so everybody knows. Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, who we confirmed through The Athletic was the third team in the ACC that filed a lawsuit. One in Florida, one in the state of South Carolina, but the ultimate one being in North Carolina where the ACC offices are held. They came to an agreement, so they settled. Both parties settled, and North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State are going to be paid more TV revenue share. 40% for those three teams. So they're getting 40% of it, and they got to split it between those three teams per The Athletic. So that is what we're talking about. But that whole litigation of them wanting to leave, join the Big Ten, ACC, where did that SEC, where did that go? You didn't do that either.
That was the big talking point that we obviously spent multiple weeks last offseason talking about in the sense of, are they actually going to be able to leave? Is there going to be some way for them to challenge the grant of rights? They were trying to get as literal as possible with the word by word description of what it meant to be a member of the conference. We haven't gotten that far, and we didn't get that far. And this seems to be some sort of reconciliation as we're seeing. I understand where you're coming from, that the shift in the payout isn't a super big win. It's not a crazy big, massive win that they came out on top. They're making millions more dollars. It's a positive outcome here.
Agreed.
Florida State and Clemson are going to be earning the money that
and North Carolina.
Right. And Miami is going to be another one too. Right. That's going to be getting more money to provide more resources for them to compete with the SEC, Big Ten. The ACC should want to produce that. Here's one thing that caught my attention in the Athletics article that I read. 2030 is when the buyout drops to $75 million. It drops significantly. That is important because the TV contracts with the SEC, Big Ten, and College Football Playoff all expire 2030, 2031. I think that the better way to frame this is that the end outcome is to be determined. We don't know what the end outcome is. I don't think anything's going to change in 2030. I think that they tried to set this up and pivot this, thinking by 5 years from now, they're going to be highly sought after by the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't think that's the case. I think that the same is going to stay the way that it is, where They thought they were the really pretty girl at the bar that everyone was going to hit on, but nobody came up to them. But in 2030, that is when we're going to find out if that maneuver was worth all of this BS.
All right. I understand what you're saying, but hold on for just a moment.
Okay.
It's $75 million per, is it not?
Yes.
Do you know what Texas and Oklahoma's was?
I definitely wasn't 75.
$50 million apiece. Now, with all due respect to Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, you ain't got that money. You ain't. And look, remember the rumors, and Oklahoma's got money. So I'm not trying to poo-poo on them. There were rumors out there that Texas said, we ain't going without Oklahoma. And if you want us, we're going to have to figure this all out behind closed doors. They did. $75 million, Joe. You're talking about, even if you got two of them, that's $150 million for just two of them. That is insane. That's why I don't consider this the overall win. You got 5 more years of them, and then, Joe, if they leave, they still owe you $75 million apiece. $75 million.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish what you're saying.
That's what just, like, listen, they got your ass. You got what you wanted, okay, and that's fine. But don't act like in the long term, it doesn't prepare to look as if that they don't have, meaning the ACC, the upper hand here, because they do. You wanted to leave, you didn't. You wanted more money, okay, you got more money. The money, I don't think the money was ever an issue. I really don't. I mean, they were trying to save their conference, and they were being greedy, and they wanted more money. The ACC said, can you let us take a breath? Can you please, for the love of God, let us take a breath? They got too greedy. And remember what Florida State people were saying? Oh, we'll pay that. That ain't nothing. We'll pay that. We'll pay the $100 million. No, you won't. You never were. What are you talking about? Like, Joe, they were coming after us, or at least after me, saying, you're not paying that. They're not going to. Like, that number's got to come massively down. Massively down. They're going to have to renegotiate that and get that number down. So, look, anything can happen in 5 years. Anything.
Right.
But as of today, as of right now, they're not losing if you're I say 2 teams with $150 million. Let's just act like Clemson and Florida State do leave. Joe, the ACC is getting $150 million. The Big 12 got $100 million to play with. Want to know why they're not hurting? Joe, they got $100 million. Like,
right.
What are we? I mean, everybody keeps saying, well, what's up with the Big 12? Brother, they got 100 bands, 100 massive bands. Like what? And by the way, they got it in a year. Joe, you know why Euromark's out strutting his shit? Because they're massively in the green. That's why. You give that level of money to the ACC, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go get somebody else. They can play with a little bit of house money here. Listen.
I understand what you're saying here, and I agree with you. The $75 million dropping from what the current exit fee is, which is $165, down to $75. Sounds like it's a big dip. It's $90 million less. 75, to your point, is still astronomically high. That is a lot of money to spend.
The problem with that, and the way that they worded that, Joe, the number would go down every year anyway.
So this is the exact quote from the article. The initial settlement terms clarified issues if/when Florida State, Clemson, or other ACC members move to leave the conference. Schools, not the league, would get to keep their TV rights, which are worth hundreds of millions of dollars between now and 2036 when the ACC's ESPN contract expires. The exit fee, according to a presentation to Clemson trustees in March, would drop annually from $165 in the 2026 fiscal year to about $75 million in 2030-2031. So I don't know necessarily if this was a part of the agreement that would
It
be
doesn't
changed,
sound
or
like
if
it's
that
part of
was
the agreement.
if it was originally written into the ESPN contract and the timeline of the contract that
If
ACC
you remember,
had with ESPN.
but that's what every school does. It's the reason why the SEC waited, if you remember, because it was 2 years before when it was reported by A&M. Okay, A&M says Texas is coming into the league. Well, Joe, they would have owed $200 million with them to have to get out of the Big 12, and they couldn't do that. But what did the SEC do? We'll wait a year. What are we talking about? We'll pay the $100 million, but we're going to wait a year. That I'm almost 99% positive that number drops because of the contract, because of the number of years.
Yeah,
it's like if you pay me 10 years, $100 million. Okay, sounds great, but it's still 10 years. That number is going to decrease. After 5 years, guess what you owe me? 5 year, $50 million.
Right. I haven't read the contract. There actually hasn't been great reporting on like the details of the contract. So like I'm kind of curious in by 2034, what that exit fee ends up becoming. Like, is it still 75 million? How much smaller does it end up becoming? I think that the biggest talking point, well, first of all, they need it to be in line with the new TV contract for the SEC,
fair.
the Big Ten, and the college football playoff. Because if they try to do it in 2036, those conferences are not going to be in a leveraged situation to go to whatever new broadcasting partner that they are turning to. They will not be in a position to say, well, yeah, we're adding these teams. How much more money are you going to give us? We saw this happen with the ACC when the SMU came in. SMU took a huge discount. If I remember correctly, Oregon and Washington State kind of got a little bit of the
paid. SMU did not get paid for the next. I think they got 2 more years, Joe.
And that was ultimately, though, all of those moves were out of desperation on multiple sides, that they had to do what was necessary to make it happen.
Well,
this is not a desperate circumstance.
Well, it paid off for SMU.
Unless, and this would be incredibly stupid, unless Florida State and Clemson said F this to everybody and by that time in 2034, and they bought out to become independents. But that wouldn't, like, I don't think anyone's running to buy the TV rights for individual teams at the current moment, because there's only one team who can capably do that. I don't think other networks are in a position to do so. And if they were going to do that, they would ask them.
I don't think there's only one team that will do that.
Well, I'm saying
Notre Dame's not the only team that can do that.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Notre Dame's the only team that is a brand big enough to earn the contract. I think that because there's one team that already occupies that unique circumstance, I don't think that NBC, CBS, ESPN, whatever it is, I don't think that they are going to line up to be like, oh, we will give you the Notre Dame deal. NBC gave Notre Dame the deal that they have because for a long period of time, they didn't have college football.
Let me throw a counter your way. Stay with me. I'll use LSU as an example. This is not happening, but let me use it. Let's say LSU wants to go independent and Bezos wants a team. Like all these venture capitalists want a team.
Well, that is something that we can't predict. And we talked about it. 5 years from now, so many things can change. That is something that is possible.
Well, hold on.
It has been one of these teams that have explored venture capitalism.
Don't say it hadn't already happened. I'll go find Ross's thing saying that there were conversations.
Well, right, that's what I'm getting at.
Right. So again, right now, so to your point, let's not get in big semantics here. To your point, there are sharks circling the waters. If Jeff Bezos wanted to buy USC in his own TV deal and to put him on Amazon TV, which is essentially what he did with Major League Baseball, by the way. I know a lot of people don't realize that this happened. Try to buy a team, couldn't buy a team. He bought the whole goddamn organization. He put it on his own network because he bought in to the Amazon deal. Obviously, that's him. The bottom line I would say here is I don't want to get that far down, but for right now, because I can't predict the future.
Obviously, yeah.
But as of right now, if you told the ACC you get those 3 schools for the next 5 years, 4 schools really with Miami, you get those schools for the next 5 years and they're not leaving, well, I feel like they get the ultimate win here. I mean, time will always be the burden, but we're talking about a singular victory. They won it. I mean, in my humble opinion, they won it. So Florida State fans are going to be all in this segment, absolutely ripping us alive, because of course they are. But I would tell Florida State fans this: if you really want to get pissed off, wait until we do your deep dive a little bit later, because you're not going to like what I got to say.
The deep dive is going to be chaotic. I agree with what you're saying, though, that at the current moment, the ACC does win for the meantime. And there's enough of a window in the next 5 years until we get to 2031 where work can be done to make up for whatever the bad ending is, the divorce at the end. If there ever is actually a true divorce later on, they can be aggressive at recruiting other brands to join the ACC in the meantime. They absolutely could be. And I wouldn't be shocked if they don't. Like adding a team like, as simple as adding a team like Tulane would be great for them, because they have been super competitive. They've been recruiting at a very high level, and they have suddenly are way more invested in football. There are G5 programs that they could bring in that would, just like SMU is right now, would probably out-compete, out-recruit, out-fund the shit teams in the conference, like Wake Forest, like UVA, that aren't trying at the current moment. They need to go after and be aggressive. That is ultimately, Blake, that is where I will put this. The way that the ACC wins is in the next 3 years, and by the time that this contract is up, or that breaking point in the contract, is if they add the most ambitious G5 teams that they can, or maybe they steal a team from another conference. That needs to be what happens.
ESPN, CBS, Fox, and Amazon conferences. We have 4 divisions now.
That's the real way of putting it.
As long as you keep putting Florida State games on the CW, I'll be okay with it. The CW.
I still think it's so ridiculous.
We had a playoff game on TNT.
That wasn't that bad. I think that the circumstance of it was like a little off. Obviously, like it felt a little weird.
It was all contract negotiations, but
right. But like, I actually don't mind Turner getting college football games. I would like for more broadcast partners to get into the mix for college football games. The CW does not need to be broadcasting college football. It doesn't. It feels like I'm watching local access PBS high school football. Like it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like I'm actually watching a football game.
No, and TNT was the same way for me. I'm like, this is too weird for me, man. But here's the thing. It doesn't stop people from watching football. It didn't stop people from watching that game that wanted to watch that game.
As long as it's not behind a fucking paywall like Peacock does, where I got to watch the damn Notre Dame games on Peacock because they decided they knew people would pay for it.
Well, that's how NBC gets you. That's how NBC is able to do that with Notre Dame. Let's be real.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
that's why they can give them so much money, because they know that Notre Dame fans have the money to spend on signing up for Peacock in order to watch the games.
Well, Joe,
do you understand how hard it was? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, they know for a fact that 100,000 people are going to come with Notre Dame at minimum.
Yeah.
At minimum to buy that, to watch the game. And here's the truth.
And then forget to cancel it at the end of the season.
There you go. I mean, to be honest with you, that's how Peacock got me. I never watched Peacock, ever. But I keep it.
The only reason I had access to is because my dad was like, how the hell am I supposed to watch the game today? He went and, paid for Peacock, and then I had to help him figure out how to cancel it at the end of the season. He was so pissed off that he had to pay for it, which is bullshit, that I have to, navigate
the
that.
error of your dad. Harlan Harris, big Florida State man in here, $5 super chat, says the whole lawsuit started because Florida State wanted unequal revenue sharing, and now that they have it and it's cheaper buyout, berate 2036, the ACC still won.
Okay, so Harlan, appreciate the super chat, of course.
I'm sure he means the fourth.
Yeah, no, he did. He sent a correction underneath it. We really just dug into this and talked about this. The cheaper buyout is still an enormous buyout. And by 2030, we are going to be deep into the weeds of revenue sharing with players. We have no idea. You might be able to summon that money from somewhere, but we don't know what your athletic department is going to be doing. I would argue spending that much money blindly would not be a good idea for supporting your athletic department.
You bring up a massive point. They're going to have to spend $20+ million just for players. Hey,
more than that. Hey,
you want to be in the SEC and the Big Ten?
You spend 30 more.
They're going to spend 10 more million, 15 more million than you were. So you're going to spend $75 million in 2030 to leave?
$100 million in 1 year. Where does that money come from? Where does that's a lot of money for a billionaire to drop.
Well, hold on. Let's not act like some of these universities don't have billion-dollar endowments. Because they do have billion-dollar endowments. If they wanted to do it,
that's a gross misuse of funds. That's an incredibly gross misuse of available money. If they did that,
I mean, well, the athletic department has to pay an endowment every year.
I'm just saying that. Well, $75 million. Wait, we're talking about $75 million.
How long has Florida State athletics been there, and how much money has the school generated off of them? Sometimes you got to help.
Well, but let's look forward from that. How much more money do they freaking make that it's worth them spending that money?
Oh, that's a really good point. You got more money, so you'll be able to recruit better against your own conference. Here's the real truth. If you want to win, you wouldn't do it because people in your own conference. But I don't know. Harlan, go ahead.
Thank you for the super chat. But I originally was kind of an advocate for them leaving, but the more that we've been attached to this circumstance,
you did not agree with me on this. But
yeah,
they still don't have a choice. They never had a choice. Hold on, Joe. They came after us before we move on here. They came after us because I kept saying, there's no way that you're leaving. You remember this, correct? It was all the time. Okay. I'm not trying to come out here and say I told you so, but told you so. You were getting mad saying that, no, we could leave. And I said, no, you can't. At least not right now. And Joe, I still don't think in 2030 that they're going to be able to leave. They're going to make money off of you. And by the way, if you do leave in 2030 and you pay them $75 million a piece, they're not losing, brother.
Spending that much money is only going to hurt you for a larger window than you think.
Without a doubt.
But here's the biggest thing. The best example. There have been a lot of teams that were good football programs that relocated, especially when the Big East was disbanded, all that stuff, that went to other conferences and haven't been very good. Miami is an example of that. But the best example, because one of the conferences that you're considering joining is the Big Ten, Nebraska. Nebraska has historically been one of the best football programs in the history of the sport. They were dominant in the Big 12, dominant, extremely dominant. They have not returned to that level of success. We're not talking about like good football team. National champions, recurring national champions. They have the NIL money to throw around to recruit big rosters in the current age, but they're still not competitive in the Big Ten because the minute that you join these more competitive conferences, you get lost in the mix. I'm not saying that Florida State can't spend with the Alabamas and they can't spend with the Ohio States and the Michigans. They absolutely can. But why are you fighting to join a conference that's already loaded to the brim? Why not continue to dominate the damn conference that gets you into the 16-team playoff every single year? If you win it,
pause. No,
you don't even need to fucking win it. You don't even need to win the conference anymore. You just need to be 10-2.
Well, that's true. But hey, no, they can't spend with them, those schools. I mean, Jimbo was right about one thing when he left. Facility-wise and everything-wise, they are down to other situations and institutions.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, what's going to happen if you got to pay Mike Norvell $50 million not to coach?
Oh, right. This is another one too. This is like, where is all this money coming from? Where is it coming from? We're not talking about, I don't even know who we can compare it to that would just have an endless supply. Is there oil reserves in Florida that I don't know about? Is there something that I don't know? Is there an alumni?
You have three massive institutions in Florida, more than any other state. I mean, California, but that's a whole different beast.
Wait, what am I missing? Seriously, Florida State fans, what am I missing?
You're not
is
missing
funding
anything.
all of this?
You're
Private
not
equity.
missing.
Why would private equity, as a private equity company, dive into this and spend $120 million? 50 to fire Mike Norvell, 75 to join a new conference.
Let me tell you why. When you buy a company, you also buy its debt. You don't just buy the company. Stay with me.
Yeah.
If you got to a situation where you could have a deal personally with Amazon or NBC or whoever, somebody will do that because it will benefit them to do that. That's
how long would it take?
But that's the thing. How long would you have to sign an unreal deal? You'd have to sign a 20, 30-year deal with a TV company.
There's ultimately the thing is though with Florida State in any school, they're not a bit. By the way, we haven't talked about Clemson at all in this. We have just fired shots directly at Florida State.
Clemson didn't do. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Clemson didn't really come out and say anything. They just said we're going to join in their lawsuit. They said, "Listen,
that's true. Right. The FSU was the catalyst for this.
They are, but hold on. Clemson said no. They're right. We need to be paid more money. Clemson ain't said nothing. North Carolina literally didn't say a word. They just said, we're going to put our weight behind it too. We need more money. Right. Miami did the same thing. I mean, Florida State was the one that took it, and that's why we're putting it on them.
Right. So what I was gonna say though, with all that debt that they theoretically, it's not debt, but like those expenses that they be incurring, they're not a conventional business. There is a ceiling to how much money that they can make from a TV contract. There is a ceiling to how much money that they can make from other sources of revenue, tickets, merchandise, branding, all of those things. There is only so much that can be brought in. More importantly, it's correlated to the success that they have on the field. You have to spend a shitload of money in order to make money. It's like Mark Cuban was talking about this when he got out of working with the Mavs and owning the Mavs. He talked about how there weren't very many years that they actually made money with the Mavs because he had the money to spend and spent it to produce success on the field. There is not on the court. There is not some deep, like crazy deep amount of money in order for a private equity business to
well, that's why you see like Jimmy Haslett, who wants to make money, he doesn't want to lose money, doesn't want to spend on it. That, right. I mean, that dude that owns the Jaguars, I don't know what he's doing.
He's all over the place. But the reason why college sports works the way
Shad Khan.
No, wait.
Shad Khan, I think is his name.
I think you're right. You're right.
Remember he's got the mustache.
Yes, I know what he looks like. His name is escaping me.
Yes, indeed. All right. Let's get to, do you want to get to Florida State or you want to get this FPI ESPN thing first?
Well, we gotta hit the break, but
yes, correct.
Yeah. Why don't we get to Florida State because we're already talking about them.
Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. Before we do that, everybody during the break, do us a favor, hit the like and share to all those groups. If you're on Facebook and to all those social media pages, if you're on Twitter, retweet Joe's tweet with us now live on Twitter. Hit that retweet for us. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Let us pay some bills around this thing. We come back. Continue to talk Florida State and a deep dive from them. ESPN Top 20 talking about Florida State, but we do continue on our deep dives here, brother. By the way, hovering around 80 days until college football starts.
I didn't even realize that. That's insane.
80 days, dude.
It's going to be week one of first week of August before we even realize it.
Well, that's my real point, because then you really start digging into it. As soon as Omaha's over and college baseball's over, I think that's when hold on. That's when the South gets involved, because I feel like everybody in the North is pretty much full football mode or starting to get there. The South gets involved after baseball's done.
Yeah, we're always in football mode way more than you guys are. But get your vacations in now. By the way, we're going to be off the week of the 19th.
I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because I completely forgot.
Well, the week of the 13th, we're going to be completely off that week. I'm going to be on a vacation, but after that, we're
Boo this man.
Oh, you took your vacation. Don't boo me.
Oh, I've taken more vacations and made you adjust more times because of T-ball more than anything, and I'm over here booing.
I'm not complaining, but we got a
playoff, damn it. Anyway, I don't even. But yeah, 80 days. Speaking of that, Joe, we continue on our deep dives here tonight. We kind of stay in the state of Florida, but we stay in Tallahassee. Joe, Florida State coming off arguably one of the worst years that they've ever had. Actually, I would probably say the worst year that they ever had. They had more inches of snow at Florida State than they did wins this past year. Inches of snow. Florida State not having more wins than that. That is completely insane. 2-10. Joe, they completely rehauled and rebuilt everything. Mike Norvell is really the only thing left other than some players. What in the hell do we make of Florida State going into 2025?
Well, that is the best opening statement to have possible for this conversation. I want to be very clear here when we get into this. I want to try to be as careful as possible to not allow what happened last year.
I agree with this.
It was the extreme end of the spectrum. You brought in a quarterback who was ass, who was not good, and a roster that was not bought in. And it sunk faster than anything that could have completely collapsed for a team. Completely fell apart. There is, as you mentioned, completely new coaching staff. There are some great coaches that they brought in. They brought in some completely new players at multiple positions that were liabilities for them last year. That is why I want to look at this in a new lens. I don't want to be it wouldn't be lazy for us, but I don't want to just lean into it's not good to build a team through the portal. And the last time that they did it, they failed. Because at the end of the day, the time they did it before that, they went undefeated. I think that we need to figure out what the middle ground is and where this middle ground is for this team. It is plausible for this team to be an 8-4 team and to get back on track and to start chugging forward. There are pieces that they brought in that should provide some sense of optimism. But I think that we need to be as careful as possible for the expectations for what Florida State does in 2025 because of everything that has changed in a single offseason.
Joe, the problem with Florida State was a year ago that I felt like that they continue to go in the transfer portal and then they hit on Braden Fisk. They hit on God bless it.
Jared Verse.
Thank you. They hit on a lot of these guys. A lot of them. Problem was they went back in there and then it completely fell on its face. Joe, and they're too deep. They have red-shirted freshmen. You get hurt throughout a season. I don't know where to put them, man. I don't know I don't know what to make of this roster. If I told you that you were in a situation where true freshmen, which you didn't really bring in a great class, along with guys you brought in here last year who didn't leave your ass after only winning 2 games, Joe, depth is a big part of college football. Always has been, always will be. Ask Notre Dame how important having really talented depth is. Ask them. They are the poster child literally every year of what having great depth looks like. That is how Notre Dame has built success, sustained success. If you do not recruit through high school, you're going to have an issue. Now, so what did they do to have to change that? Joe, they went right back in the portal. They went right back in the portal. 8 players on offense, 7 players on defense. Are we 1,000% sure that you just proved to me now you're replacing coaching staffs on both sides of the ball that they're going to be able to overcome this? Like, I can break them down. I actually like Castellanos, if I'm being honest.
I do
like
too.
Him. I think he's going to do really well in a Gus Malzahn offense. The problem is You brought in 4 offensive linemen from the portal. Joe, the last time that we talked about a team that had a very prophetic and very recognizable decal on their helmet in Oklahoma, they brought in 4 offensive linemen, and we screamed from the very beginning, panic, get off of the boat. It is on fire. The only difference here is these guys are seniors, and maybe their experience can help them. I don't know what to make of them, Joe. I like some of the pieces. I like that you get Squirrel White. Problem is, Squirrel White led the SEC in drops last year. Like, I don't mind the pieces, but I've also seen these guys play elsewhere, and it hasn't worked out for them. Now you're bringing in a whole collective class with a whole new coaching staff. Joe, that's almost everything to replace. And they would say, and their argument would be, well, that's the point. We had to so that we could win.
That's what I'm getting at here is that, like, the best possible outcome that you need to be rooting for if you're Florida State is to go 8-4. Like, that is
record.
That is a tremendous season if you go 8-4. That to me is the ceiling that I see. Because Castellanos, I'm always going to butcher that and mispronounce that. Apologies there. Gus Malzahn gets so much out of quarterbacks with his skill set. I went back and rewatched the Florida State Boston College game. One of the most hilarious games, by the way. They couldn't stop wheel routes of all things, like just a wheel route. Every time they ran a wheel route, it was a huge gain or a touchdown.
By the way, to a Florida State running back that transferred to Boston College.
Yes, which is even crazier. I think that with him, what hurt them so much last year is that DJU, there are so many problems with DJU, but he wasn't able to improvise. There were no improvisational skills that he was going to provide. He was not the same runner that he once was. Castellanos, when you were great with Jordan Travis, it was when he was able to extend plays with his legs. I think you're going to be able to do that with Castellanos. I'm a really big fan of Deuce Robinson. I think that he's got work that needs to be done, but he is a very unique athlete, very rare athlete. Was recruited as a tight end, is listed as an X receiver. That stuff is dangerous. There are not a lot of corners in the ACC that are going to be able to guard that dude. But as you said, you've got a whole new starting offensive line from the portal. You have 7 new projected starters at the current moment from the portal. I don't want to just lean into that argument that we've constantly had of, well, you live by the portal, you die by the portal, blah, blah, blah. We've said it 100 times over. We've said it 100 times over.
But you do.
You do. And I feel like I don't want to keep saying it because we've said it so many times about Florida State specifically. I will gladly talk about it about other teams, but this team specifically, they know. Florida State fans know. They've been beaten over the head with that statement. I like, though, that there was an understanding. And I said this after they switched coordinators. They looked in the mirror and they realized whatever the hell we just did was so bad that we need to hit the reset button. Mike Norvell was an adult enough to realize I need to start over. Adult's probably not the right word, but I need to start over. There are a lot of stupid, stubborn coaches that will keep trotting out the same coordinators and the same roster that didn't go hard and didn't prepare effectively for games and continue to lose and to stink. His willingness to reset like this is why I feel a little bit better for the expectations.
All right. The problem is you took my whole next argument away from me, and you live by the portal and you die by the portal.
Oh, so your whole argument? No, go ahead. No. What do you have to say about that, though?
But you do. And listen, you talked about making coaching changes. I like Gus Malzahn a lot as a coach. I just don't. I mean, I do think he may. I mean, Joe, look what's happened at Auburn since he's left. I mean, they've been god awful. So he's a really good play caller. Love him to death. Now, I wish he'd stop going side to side so much and just run the football like north and south. You're going to have to do that, and you will get aggravated with him going east and west. There's going to be a lot of negative plays that your quarterback is going to have to get you out of. Castellanos, I mean, like, Joe, there's a region he got benched. There's a reason. Okay, like there were some situations where I don't think that Bill O'Brien liked what he was doing. And I think he was better than the guys that he trotted out of there. But look, man, Joe, I got to be real with you. I think that they will respond. I don't think they're going 2-10 again. I think that they'll actually be moderately 500. But I think this is a full-blown rebuild here. Full-blown.
Oh, it is. I mean, it absolutely is. I think everybody
recognizes
it is. Yeah.
Well, it's starting over. And I look, if you can go 8-4, great on you. And you can. But there are too many question marks for me to come into this season and saying that they're going to do that. Do they have on – here's what I'll say. On paper, can they do that? Yes. But there are things that worry the shit out of me. You talked about our lads. Go to our lads. This is why I was going to say live by the portal, die by the portal. It's a deeper meaning. Depth. Go to our lads right now. Go look at all of your depth. It is freshmen and redshirted freshmen. You cannot sustain if you get hurt. The more about praying to God, the thing that you should pray to God about is that you stay healthy, which you're just not going to do in football. Joe, name a team to me that you can remember that moderately had success and didn't get hurt.
Right, it doesn't.
The Remington Award winner for Ohio State tore his Achilles. Notre Dame's entire defense was banged up. Let's call it what it is, especially at edge. And then you lost the guy that led you in sacks in the interior of the defensive line. Like, Joe, you're a couple injuries away from here from being in trouble. Like, if Ohio State, Bama, Texas, Joe, if an edge rusher got hurt last year for Texas, Colin Simmons was coming in.
Right. He was rotational for them, and we talked about the production.
He didn't even start. He had double-digit sacks. My point being, when you were recruiting in high school, Patrick Payton was the guy that you would rotate in. He was the guy that's a different level dude. So
wait, to that point, I agree, and I like the sentiment and the phrasing of this, and I think that realistic Florida State fans understand that this is a rebuild. You can't go 2-10 and expect your team to flip like that. There was only one recent circumstance that I can think of where a head coach stayed after a really bad season and they immediately were competitive again because of just weird circumstances. And that was Brian Kelly at Notre Dame when they went 5-7 that year out of nowhere, and they immediately bounced back after that. They had quarterback injuries. They had injuries all over the roster. That wasn't what plagued you last year. It was a misfiring on the guys that you brought in, and it ultimately felt like a lack of focus from the entire group. And again, I give them credit for realizing that they need to bring in a better group of young men in order to get to that new spot, to bring in veteran coaches at both coordinator spots to make a big jump forward. I also think that where they have failed tremendously in high school recruiting, they are trying to make better jumps, better efforts in high school recruiting. Right now, Keyshawn Henderson, quarterback that they're going after, very gifted player. He has been a riser. He's committed to Houston right now. They've got the money to out-recruit Houston. I don't know if they're going to flip him because there's a lot of ties to Houston for Henderson, but that to me is the proof in 2026 right now. They're not super highly ranked. They need to finish with a great recruiting class. That is what the look ahead is. Go 7-5, 8-4, and finish with the best recruiting class in the ACC. That needs to be the goal.
Well, can I bring something up? They started doing this whole portal thing when Travis Hunter said, "I'm not coming there." I'm going to say this, and we're going to get in big trouble. Travis Hunter broke him a little. Because if you go back and look, they
haven't recruited well since then.
They have not recruited well since then. So whether you want to admit it or not, you better rip the Band-Aid off. This is a whole session hour for Florida State fans. He broke you. He broke that staff. Oh, you don't want to do that? We'll go to the portal and get experienced players. Sounds good. Well, you better hit on them. And I think Castellanos is better than DJU. Vastly better.
Oh, you do think he's better? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think
agree.
he's vastly better.
Yes.
You know, what can Brock Glenn be if God be told? I do look at them defensively, Joe. They bring in Stephen Thompson he was at Syracuse and Nebraska. They bring in James Williams, who had 5 sacks last year from Nebraska. Dante McCray from Western Kentucky, who had 59 tackles and 2.5 sacks. I mean, they got some guys, though. They got some guys that if they could hit here a little bit defensively. It's just, man, I go into the season with them so gun-shy to say any success is going to happen that I just look at this and say, like, Joe, they got to go to Florida. And me and you are pretty high on Florida. All right? They got to go to – I know we ain't gotten the schedule yet. They got to go to Clemson.
They do, yeah.
By the way, you got Miami, and then here's another one. You open the season with Bama. Talk about needing to – Joe, here's my whole thing. You went out and got portal players, and you're starting the season with Bama. Okay, what if they expose you because of all – like, remember the Dan Lanning Georgia game in game 1 where they just were fixing all the kinks out that they could? You remember it. Well, Oregon actually wasn't that bad with Bo Nix. They weren't that bad.
Well, Clemson, the same thing happened with Georgia this year where, you know, they got their asses kicked. We're like, oh, my God, they're screwed. They can't throw the football. And they got better, not linearly, but like week by week, they started to improve. So if you get your ass kicked by Bama –
But my point is to that, though, well, Clemson, too. It happened to Clemson last year. I mean, like, Joe, what are we – I mean, this could get bad quickly. It could get bad – I'm telling you, it could get bad quickly. But you're going to find out. And, look, let's get to their schedule. Let's just get to their schedule. I mean, because, we're already there. You want to read it off?
Yes. Start with Alabama, as you just said, versus East Texas A&M, bye week, versus Kent State, at UVA, versus Miami, versus Pitt, at Stanford, versus Wake Forest, at Clemson, versus Virginia Tech, at NC State, at Florida. The way I always kind of like to highlight, like, what are the games that you're not going to win? You're not going to beat Alabama week 1. You're not going to go on the road and beat Clemson, which is probably going to be a night game if I were to assume. And you're not going to beat Florida in the Swamp, which also will probably be –
Joe, they're not going to beat Miami either.
And they're probably not going to beat Miami. So those are 4 games that are easy to identify that they're probably not prepared to beat. They benefit from the fact that the rest of their schedule in the ACC is pretty thin. They're not facing North Carolina, which could be an upstart. They're not facing SMU this year. There are chances for them, as I talked about here, to go 8-4. But they can't slip. You know, they can't lose their footing traveling all the way to Stanford. They can't lose their footing against a consistently competitive team like Virginia Tech and Pitt. You know, they have to play. I think that I don't know how I want to phrase this. 8-4 is on the horizon for them.
I can't go
there. Norvell's a good enough of a coach. 7-5, 8-4 is a capable, good season for them.
I can't go there. 7-5, fine. I can't go 8-4. I can't. I just don't know if they're going to win 6 more games than they did a year ago. I mean, Joe, there's more than meets the eye there. And you talk about not slipping down the stretch. Joe, again, you're talking about injuries. We're assuming right now that everybody stays healthy. And I'm not wishing injuries on anybody, but that's just not likely. It's not only is it not likely, it's just unheard of. So as much as I think the sport is overall massively better with Florida State when they're really good. The sport always will be. Joe, I'm not there yet. It's another situation where you're going to have to come out here and prove it to me, because you went and got more kids from the portal. Joe, 3 of the guys that you want in your defensive line have very little to no production. I mean, this isn't like Braden Fisk. This isn't like Jared Verse, where they absolutely abused the level of play that they were currently at. This isn't that level of situation here. It's just not. Like what did Jared like? Jared Verse was one of the top defenders in the FCS coming in, was he not?
He was. And look, there are good players that they brought in that were ranked highly by all three outlets for transfer portal rankings. So there is talent that is coming in. But to your point, Braden Fisk at the time was a top 3 defensive tackle in the portal. Jared Verse the year before was the number 1 FCS recruit coming in when he came in.
Well, that whole Braden Fisk thing. Let's throw this out. Bro, Braden Fisk got in, like, literally an offer from all the Big Ten and SEC schools. Every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're not talking about these level guys. Squirrel White, okay, maybe, but like, is he going to not have the dropsies? Joe, he led the SEC in drops.
Right. There it is, talent, but you're right. There are caveats with the talent. It's less of a foregone conclusion than what we've talked about in the past. And maybe it's better for them because last year they were one of the best portal classes. And we talked about coming into the season, like, man, we really kind of like some of the things that they did. And we really thought that Pat Payton and Marvin Jones were going to create like a really formidable pass rush duo. And we really thought that there was talent to be had with offensive linemen returning, but we were sorely wrong. They tried to build their roster with all the Alabama cast-offs that all left, and they all clearly left for a reason. I think with all that in mind, though, like, you're right. This isn't the same level of portal classes that they had in back-to-back years where they went 12-0 in 2023, and then in 2022 they had one of their best seasons. Those were recognized as very good recruiting classes, and they had a bunch of guys that went on to be top 50 draft picks. I don't know if the same can be said fully with this roster.
You're not more talented than Bama, Miami, Clemson, and Florida.
No.
So do you slip up? I mean, I could easily see them slipping up somewhere. Again, you got to lock in for the full rebuild.
Well, considering how badly they slipped up the entire year last year, that's why I think it's fair to assume that, like, one of these games against the middle to the back end of the ACC, you're probably going to unexpectedly drop one. And I need to, like, continuously reinforce this. I hope Florida State fans are real in recognizing that just because you go 7-5 does not mean that this thing is, this program is screwed and you're stuck with footing the bill for Mike Norvell and a shit team for the next however many years until his contract is up. That just because you go 7-5 does not mean this team is going backward. It's actually improving if that happens. You haven't recruited well enough in the high school ranks to produce sustained success like all of these other programs do. You have to get back to where you've been, and the way that you get back to where you've been is going and getting Keyshawn Henderson and pulling him away from Houston. I will continue to reiterate that. And then Keyshawn Henderson has been lauded as this guy who is such a great leader that so many other recruits might want to follow him. I've been tracking this kid for a while. There is a lot of potential there. But we broke him down on the A to Z Film Room channel. I've listened to like a bunch of things on him. He's a great player. If you get him, that could be the biggest shift forward for 2026. 2025 is kind of just an intermediary year.
Make a bowl game. That's my goal.
7-5, make a bowl game.
There you go. All right, Joe, before we get out of here, the ESPN Top 20 FPI is out. Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Penn State round out the top 5. Oregon, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, Tennessee in the top 10. Texas A&M at 11. LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, Michigan in the top 15. South Carolina, Oklahoma, SMU, Florida, and Kansas State. When you see this ESPN's Football Power Index, your thoughts?
I mean, I was genuinely perplexed. The number one was like, why is Alabama at number 4? What is Alabama? I don't fully know what these calculations go into, and I know that there's probably weighted things that I'm not considering. They have a tough schedule. They have a good roster and an unsettled quarterback situation. Are we to say that they finish in the top 5 or top 7? I'm cool with, but to have them as the 4th most likely team to win a national title over Penn State, over Oregon, who has been better recruited over the past couple of years, and over Clemson, and even Miami feels a little off to me. That was like the big one that I'm like, why is Alabama so high?
Yeah, I think I agree there. Like I agree that Bama being at 4, and especially over Penn State, is way too rich for me. I do think that these calculations put in a situation of how much talent from a blue chip ratio that you have. And I think that's what it calculates off of. Really and truthfully, based off of everything else that it calculates on. I'm with you. I would not put Bama at 4. Elks, cover your ears. I wouldn't put Ohio State at 3. So
I know that feels rich to.
Yeah, very rich. Everything you got to replace on defense, replacing the quarterback on offense. We'll see. Is Julian saying that guy? We don't know yet. But above Penn State and above Oregon might be a little rich. There are some other teams on here that I really question. A&M at 11.
I mean, they've been well recruited over the last couple of years. This A&M roster, I mean, we talked about it, man. There is some really good talent that needs to step up to the plate, but like they have a good offensive line. They've got a really good run game. They've got 5-star talent on their defense. There's big question marks, but
they've had that before, and they keep going 8-4.
That's true. I understand your pause though.
Auburn at 15.
Yeah, that seems soon. And if blue chip has something to factor into this,
I mean, Jackson Arnold, right,
is a 5-star, but we know that he wasn't that good. So is that really a real 5-star if he's underperformed? Auburn feels odd to me.
South Carolina and Michigan at 15 and 16.
Michigan could be a little bit higher. South Carolina feels a little high knowing how much they lost.
I would take Lenora Sellers and South Carolina with him over a first-time starting Bryce Underwood.
That's fair.
Any day of the week. Now, Bryce Underwood has a bigger upside, in my opinion.
But
Bryce Underwood got a bigger upside than Lenora Sellers.
Lenora Sellers could be a top 5 pick.
He could be, but this kid is much far of a better passer than Lenora Sellers is.
That's fair.
I mean, Joe, I got to be honest with you. I think Florida is massively underrated.
Yeah, I'm shocked that they're not in the top 10. I really think that they should be in the top 15.
Dude, people are going to – when we put out our top 20 or top 15 and Florida's in there, people are going to be like, they have lost their godforsaken minds.
Well, we're a Florida fan channel right now. We're all pro.
I mean, you and Billy Napier pretty much talk every day now. Isn't that right?
No. He did follow me. I still don't know why.
Well, we were talking about Florida that day, and he was let's not act like Billy Napier ain't listening to Ruffino and Joe. That's for damn sure.
He's a big Ruffino and Joe show fan.
Big Ruffino and Joe show fan. That is actually accurate. Listen, last thing I'm going to say on the FPI for ESPN. LSU beat Bama in 2019, and they still had him as the number 1 team over LSU.
So it goes to I don't know. The FBI thing just always catches my attention because it's
if you're doing a real power ranking, this is fine. But I mean, nobody's attaching their name to it. It just makes ESPN look bad.
Alex, you're off. The article I sent Blake has Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, not Texas, UGA, Bama as 1, 2, 3.
I have Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Penn State.
That's what I have too.
Yep.
Unless on 3, the article that I sent you
messed up,
and they miswrote it. Regardless.
I mean, me and you not have the same list from the article that we read that we were
Alex saying they updated it, but like that is weird if that's the case. I don't know if there was a different article or not.
Doesn't matter. They still shouldn't be above Penn State.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right. See y'all on Sunday. Maybe.
No, we'll be back. We'll be back on Sunday.
You never know how T-ball works, Joseph. I'm just joking. We'll be back Sunday. Until then, we'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a great night. Peace.